Well, let's find out the thinking behind this electricity increase. We're joined now by NERSA's Department Head of Electricity Pricing and Tariff, Brian Sechotlo. Mr. Sechotlo, good afternoon, good morning rather. I'm used to working in the afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So with so many electricity blackouts in the country, what exactly is it that we're paying for? I mean, usually when a product doesn't work, you don't see companies raising the prices.
Good morning, lady. Yeah, that's true. If you don't get a product, you don't have to pay for it, and that's part of what we do. Let me start first. When we do the ESCOM price increase, we always look at what load shedding there was, and then we make an adjustment for that load shedding, because you cannot pay for a product that you have actually not consumed. If at any time you had a load shedding, then obviously your machine, your meter is not running, and therefore you cannot be paying for that. But in coming to the actual question about the tariffs, yes, it is different tariffs for various municipalities, starting with the ones that you've mentioned, Cape Town, and the ones in Gauteng. But on overall, the increase is at around 14.59%.
Yeah. How did you come up with that number? I mean, it's quite steep. It's 3 times the rate of inflation. How did we get there?
Remember, if you go back, I think in March this year, there was an increase that was given to ESCOM of about 15%. And therefore, after you do that increase to ESCOM, you then do the rates calculations, and the bulk tariff to the municipalities that they buy from ESCOM at was 17.8%. And then the other increases that municipalities are facing is obviously your CPI increase on salaries, on repairs and maintenance and other costs. So when you take the basket of that, it brings you to an average of 14.59% increase.
Yeah, you see, I'm listening to all the factors that you're putting in that basket there, and I'm wondering how much thought was given to consumers and businesses that, I mean, some of our businesses are really just struggling to stay afloat in the middle of a tight economy. How much thought was given to how South Africans are struggling at the moment?
Yes, we always do that, and obviously this cannot be talked about in isolation without actually going back to the main supplier being ESCOM, because municipalities are also buying from ESCOM. So when we do the ESCOM price evaluation, we make sure, first of all, that ESCOM is operating at an efficient level, but then we do an evaluation of the impact of the economy. And then we also do an evaluation on the sustainability of ESCOM, the effect on jobs and all other factors. And unfortunately, at the rate where we are now, the prices of all the inputs are actually increasing, and therefore the number that could come was 15%, which then relates to 17.8 to municipalities and then 14.59 to customers. But definitely we do give that thought to the customers to make sure that the way customers, for instance, this year, because of the COVID, normally we would allow increases above guideline. But this year we went on a drive to talk to municipalities and say, could we please limit the increases to 14.59, which is the guideline, and nothing above that? And then we'll see maybe next year that we can then make any other adjustments.
Could we ever see a decrease? I mean, the regulator essentially was set to hold virtual public briefings in July, and yet the increases are coming. Could we ever see a decrease, and what happens to those public hearings?
We are hopeful to see that in the future, but as it is right now, as I'm saying, all the inputs, you talk about coal is increasing exponentially. You talk about the shortage of that coal itself, and therefore we have to also use more expensive gas, and therefore the costs are actually have to be taken into account, and they result in higher increases. But as we go, we are hopeful that with the coming in of IPPs, because we can see that the prices of IPPs, they started very high, but as we go forward, they seem going down. And the more we have of that, and they may lessen the burden on other customers.
Well, all we can do is hope. Thank you for joining us this morning, Brian. That was Brian Sechotlo, the Department Head of Electricity Pricing and Tariff at NERSA.